Mikki from Mikki's Frame Shop here, and I'm very happy tonight to be on the Country Chic page to show you guys a tutorial on how to do a finish I call Rustic Beach. So we'll give it just a second to get people here. It's going great. It's been a really wet, horrible day all day, but now it has cleared off and just became a really pretty day. So don't know where you guys are, but when you tune in, would you let us know that you're here, and we'll get started with the video as soon as we get a couple of you here. Hopefully you'll be here. All right, so we do have someone that is reading comments, so if you have any questions, just type the questions down in the comments, and my friend Tanya is going to read those questions to me while I keep going and doing the tutorial. And I've got my friend David here as well running the camera. Couldn't do this big a tutorial without two really good friends here. So the name of this tutorial is Rustic Beach, and when I came up with this, I had a couple of really boring furniture pieces that I wanted to paint, but I didn't really want to do just a traditional paint all over them. I wanted to give them a little bit of pizzazz. So the way these pieces started out, really inexpensive pieces, a very shiny finish, inexpensive hardware, just not, something that we want to put in our house at the moment. We really like something with a little more look, a little more pizzazz. So I'll show you how I'm going to take it from this finish to the finished piece right here in front of us. So this piece is called Rustic Beach, and we are going to go from really inexpensive, really shiny, to something that looks more like boards and has a very distressed beachy finish. All right, so I'm going to put that one to the side, and we'll get started with the distressing part. So the top of these pieces were very slick, very shiny, and not really paintable as they were. Almost a laminate kind of finish. So super hard, super slick, super shiny. So the first thing I want to do is I want to give this top a little more fun and a little more definition. And I'm going to show you how to do that. You want a straight edge that is long enough to go across the entire piece, depending on how big your piece is. And you're going to lay it on your tabletop or whatever part you're doing. And you can use one of three tools. You can use an awl or a flathead screwdriver, or in this case with these tables, they were so slick and hard I needed to use a little fine chisel. All right. So on this part, you can either measure out your piece and put your boards or where your boards are going to be completely even. I didn't really want to do that. I wanted it more rustic, and so I just wing it, and that's what I'm going to show you on this drawer. So I just put the straight edge down and take my flat thing, and I want to score out lines in the top of the piece. After I've done a few lines or a few scores that way, then I can come back and kind of give it a little more rough texture, a little bit wider. And then I also want to gouge out a little bit because these boards were beaten up, they're sitting on the beach. So that's what you want to do. Don't forget to do the ends of your boards, because you want to really fake this out and make it look like a board. So here's one I did earlier and gouged it out, went down the edge of it, and don't worry if you get off the line, because remember, this is a very rustic finish. These boards are beaten up. All right, so that's the first thing that I do. And then on this particular piece, I want to give it even more character. All right, so I'm going to take different tools. I've got an awl. I've got this big nail that I think was used for gutters, something like that. A rasp, And one of my favorite things, a bicycle chain. All right, so I'm gonna start out with the awl. And all I'm gonna do is use this to give the corners lots of character, so wormholes. Same thing with the nail. So interesting thing about doing wormholes, evidently worms like the ends of boards better than they like the middles, so they like end grain better. So when you're doing something with little holes, you want to put more of them at the corners, not so much in the middle of the board. A few, but not as much, more at the corners. So then, bicycle chain. You can do it a couple of different ways. You can wind it up that way and throw it at the piece, or throw it at David. Or you can make it like a little hammer handle and whack it. So watch out when you're whacking, because it can kick back and hit your hand, so kind of keep it small. And you get these weird little snail trails is what I call them. So that's what I got with the bicycle chain. But you can really use just about any tool. Depending on how big distressing marks, you can use hammers, all sorts of things. All right, after we've distressed it, we want to take our sandpaper. And in the case of this one, because they were so very shiny, I used 150 sandpaper. And for these, I actually used the electric sander. I did not do them by hand. And I went all over it to take the extreme shine off. So all you need to do is get it to, here's the original super shiny finish. All you're doing is taking some of that shine off. You're not trying to get it down to wood. You're just trying to get a nice roughened up finish. All right, so we've done those steps. We've given our piece lots of lines and character. So here's our piece that we're gonna do in the middle. All right, so you can see this is what I just showed you. That's how the piece will come out. We've got our board lines. We've got lots of distressing. All of that is what you want to put in to give your the illusion of boards. The second step we're going to do right now, and you'll see in a minute that we've got it in steps here. The second step, we want to use our texture powder from Country Chic, and we're going to start out with cobblestone. So I have already put my texture powder out in a cup, and we're going to do about half and half. Half texture powder and half all-in-one, and in this case it's in the color cobblestone. And you're gonna mix it up. And here's the thing about doing this kind of finish, which I'm getting ready to show you, this part here, the darker gray with the little nubbins. I don't want to mix this up and incorporate it in all the way. I want to have it still where there is grainy texture to it. If you mix it up all the way, you get a really wonderful Venetian plaster kind of finish. But I want it to be extra grainy, gritty, lumpy, just nice and lumpy. All right. Oh, and by the way, this does not hold well. So when you're doing your project, you need to do this at the time you're doing it. So it doesn't store well. So you've got to pretty much do it at the time. And then I'm going to put it out on my plate so I have enough surface, because now we're going to take our sponge. This is just a chunk of sponge, and I'm going to get the sponge in there and get it all grainy. Can you guys hear me and see everything okay? Is it going good? Let us know in the comments and make sure that we know you're here, and tell us where you're from. All right. I can hear you fine. So here we go. We've got the sponge, and we're just going to rock the sponge all over, but in a random non-pattern. All right. So that's your next step, is to get some more texture into this piece. And don't forget your edges. So all the way around. And if you noticed, I stopped this one in an irregular pattern because I still want this piece to turn out good in the end. So when you're doing something with lots of texture, usually you don't want to stop in a very linear straight edge. You want to make it random if you're going to come back and do something later. All right, so that's our texture finish. This we want to leave and let it dry, probably for 24 hours. Depends on your climate. You may be able to get away with it a little bit quicker, but pretty much you want to let it dry at least overnight. All right, so after I did that, then I come back in and do something really fun. And you can do this with any colors you happen to have. Today I'm going to use Jitterbug, which is a really nice medium green, Peacoat, which is one of my absolutely all-time favorite colors, and Full Bloom. So you may think Full Bloom is an odd one to add into something I'm calling Rustic Beach, but again, if you look at this piece, the lightness of Full Bloom gives you a really cool little bit of extra color. So always pick out something random in your color when you're doing something like this. So remember, this has dried over here. And the next day we're going to come back in with a really raggedy paintbrush. And in certain places, not all over, you want to mix and dab in some color. Let's put a little bit of that Full Bloom in there. All right, so you dab in some color, and again, let that dry. This doesn't have to dry as much when you dab in the color. You can get away with drying that with a hair dryer just to get your little dabs of color dry. The next day, you're gonna come back with your all-in-one paint in Lazy Linen, and you're going to put a whole coat on top of everything we've done here with the Lazy Linen. And then after that has dried, again, somewhere around overnight or 24 hours, you're going to come in with a couple of different things. We're going to use sandpaper. This is 250, and we're going to use a kitchen scrubby sponge. I really prefer the yellow and green scrubby sponges. The blue ones, I've actually had the blue transfer off onto light colors. So I always suggest you use the green and yellow scrubby sponges. It's wet. The cool thing about the scrubby sponges over just a piece of Scotch-Brite is when you're using this, now we're going to go in here and take some of this Lazy Linen off and get back to some of this. So we're going to distress off our paint now. So you're going to take your scrubby sponge, and if you can see right there, what I've actually done is made a paint mud puddle. So I couldn't really see how far I'd gone without using the sponge side. So that's what you're going to do, is come in and reveal some of this stuff that we did previously. And you can see the reason for using the texture powder was then we get this lovely build up and depth of texture. So you can't get that without doing this lumpy texture stuff first. All right, so that's your step. You come in and you reveal as much or as little of one, the color of the piece it was originally, and then the colors that we did under that. And you guys remember, you can do this sort of thing in any color combination. This exact thing was actually how I did this monster piece behind me. Same technique. All right, so I'm not going to distress this whole thing. Tanya, how are we looking on time?
14.
All right, so we do have, we're going good. So you just keep up. The reason I like to do two things, let me show you on the dry part. sometimes you want to get a little bit more into the what do you call it? The little steps and the grooves. You want to get more into the grooves. So sometimes you need something beside the sponge. Also, remember that you want to really highlight where your boards are. So come back through and really get the paint off where you made those score lines to make boards. All right, I'll get one end of this kind of where I want it so that I can show you the next step, which will be the glaze. Guys, I love glaze. I feel like glaze really makes a piece. I use lots of wax, but I think glaze gives you a whole nother dimension, and you can mix your own colors with glaze, which I really love. All right. So again, you would want this to dry before we go on to our next step. But of course, to give you a tutorial in the amount of time we've got, we're going to hurry up all of these things. So let this dry again before you do the glaze step, but we'll do it right now. So I have got glaze in graphite and smoky quartz. Here's the cool thing if you're not familiar with glaze. Glaze is a clear base with just a little bit of coloring in it. So where these look like they're black and brown, when they dry, they're actually in a clear base. So you get, it's not opaque, it's a transparent color. So that's what's cool about glaze. Glaze also comes in clear, and what I've done with the clear is I made a blue glaze. So that color I told you about pea coat that I love so much, I've used a little bit of pea coat in with, hey, another tip on glaze, always wipe this off because man, the tops stick hard on glaze. It's always a good idea to wipe all your paint off, but especially glaze because man, it sticks. And again, I like to use more than one color, but this also works with less colors. So don't think you have to go out and buy everything in the world. You can do this with less colors, but I just want to show you how fun it is to kind of really play with it. So two ways you can do glaze. You can put glaze on with baby wipes, or you can put glaze on with a wet t-shirt. When you're doing glaze, it's a really good idea to have more than one wet t-shirt or wet wipe in your hand, because you're gonna, this is totally a put it on, take it off kind of thing. So I'm gonna dip in the graphite glaze first and just rub it on. And you wanna make sure that you're getting your glaze down into these cracks, because all of a sudden you've really turned that crack into something deep with the glaze. And the reason I like to mix the colors a little bit is you get that whole differentiation. See how pretty that shows up? This is what I love about glaze. It shows up all of your yummy textures just beautifully. And I think mixing the colors gives us more of that effect of washed up beach kind of thing. So you're gonna do your glaze all over the whole entire piece. And I'll show you on this piece. Here you can see where there's blue glaze. It's right in that crack. You can see the brown really well here, and you can see the graphite here. But you want to mix it in and out, and you definitely want to leave some of your lazy linen showing through the glaze. And you can do that when the glaze is wet by going back through and rubbing back down to your original base color. But there you go, that's why I put more than one color on it, because I just love the way you get more texture and just kind of more yummy stuff. So it's a put glaze on and take glaze off. And remember to always get all of your edges. And the cool thing about glaze is you can put it on fairly thin in a first coat. And then if you decide to, you can come back and add some more in different places to give you more fun. On the legs, I think it shows on this side. Does it show on this side? No, and let me turn it around. On the legs, I also did a little bit of that sponging with the texture, and then I have painted over the whole thing with the cobblestone. And what will happen then is when I go to distress it after I've put that on the cobblestone, again I'll get some pretty texture in with the paint, because we're going for an all over look. So we've got the cobblestone on the bottom at the top, and then lazy linen on top, and then all the yummy goodness on top of that. But just cobblestone on the legs, 2 coats with the a little bit of the texture powder. And then we're going to come back in and distress the legs as well, and glaze the legs too. All right, so that's what it takes to do all the paint steps, is just those steps, playing in the paint, getting lovely textures until you like it. Another thing you can do is this spot here, or actually that spot, I feel like I've got a little too much wood showing right there. So what I can do is come back in and just dry brush a little bit. So I can come back and give it a little bit of a coat of dry brushing, and I can cover up if I feel like I've distressed too much off. So always remember that at this stage, you can keep playing in your paint, you can add, you can remove, until you get it just where you like it. And then we come to top coats. So anything that is a table, the top of a dresser, something like that, I really think needs the clear coat or the tough coat. I really don't think that wax is a good enough resist for things that have hard use like a tabletop. So I'm going to use, or I did use, 2 coats of the clear coat on the legs of the finished piece, and I used 3 coats on the top. And I want to show you my favorite Country Chic tool, the round sponges. The round sponges with the clear coat are just fabulous. Uh-oh, I forgot to get this one open. Not even happening. All right, so while I'm fighting with this, I have forgotten to tell you guys, if you want to order some Country Chic paint, go to countrychicpaint.com and enter the coupon code Mikki's Frame Shop 10, and you will get 10% off any Country Chic product that you order. So I highly recommend, when you order your paint and your clear coat, get one of these round sponges. We'll have to pretend because I can't get this open. But what you want to do is you want to pour your clear coat out into a plate. You can use something reusable like a pie plate, which is what I normally do, or you can use something that you're going to throw away later. But you pour it out in here because you don't want to get any yuck back in your full thing of clear coat. And then you rub into the clear coat just a little bit, get it on the sponge, wipe it off on the side just a little bit, and then you take this and you rub across the whole surface just one time. All right, come back with the corner of it and get your little edges. And as long as you check and make sure that you don't have any drips or anything else, that's it. With the sponge, you're ready to go. You're gonna let it dry at least overnight or 24 hours. Put your second and third coat on, and your little piece will be done. Oh, I did forget one thing. Wait a minute. I thought about the drawer and forgot one thing. All right, so this came with some really ugly hardware. Not only do we not like this style much anymore, but it's really cheap. It looks like brassy tin kind of stuff. So what I did on that piece is I took this out, I filled the holes with Bondo, and then I drilled a new hole and put the pretty little glass knob on it. So always remember that changing your hardware out can give you a really great new look. So if anybody's got any questions, I can answer those. Otherwise, I'd like to say thank you to Roseanne and Sarah and the team at Country Chic for letting me do this tutorial for you. I'm not sure if I've taken a breath the whole time. Felt nervous. Hopefully it came across well. If you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments later, and we'll go back and answer any questions. But before I let you go, I've really got to tell you something exciting. Today is the launch date for the new spring and summer colors. So the spring and summer colors are these lovely, bright, fun colors. And then we also have an insider collection of great, fun colors as well. So these colors are available at the shop. You know I'm showing you purple, which this one is Illusionist. Y'all know I love my purple. So great, new, really bright, really fun colors. Think about spring coming up and doing those fun porch signs with all these yummy brights. You guys, you can paint Easter eggs with this paint. Did you know that? All kinds of good stuff. You can paint plastic. My flower pots out front are that plastic. They're old. They were old and grimy. 2 summers ago, I painted them with purple. They hold up beautifully. The All-in-One paint has a built-in primer, so it holds on all kinds of surfaces fabulously. About the only thing that it truly doesn't like, and you really have to sand or prime first, is something that has never been wood. It's weird, it's super shiny, super hard. That one you do have to do a little bit of prep work first, like we did on this table. Lots of other stuff. You can use this outside. My sign on the side of my building is painted in All-in-One paint and covered with Tough Coat. So remember, go to countrychicpaint.com. You can order these new spring and summer colors, or the colors I showed you today, Lazy Linen and Cobblestone. Be sure to pick up one of those wonderful sponges. Love those things. They are fabulous. And the discount code again is Mikki's Frame Shop 10. So Mikki's is M-I-K-K-I-S, Frame F-R-A-M-E, Shop S-H-O-P, and then the numbers 1010. So Mikki's Frame Shop 10 to get your 10% discount when you order at countrychicpaint.com. And I want to thank Roseanne and Sarah again, and my wonderful team here, David and Tanya. And all you guys that tuned in, thank you so much. Please share it if you have any thoughts that a friend of yours wants to learn how to paint or is curious about a new finish. Share this tutorial and let us know how you liked it. Thank you so much, and good night from Mikki's Frame Shop and the team at Country Chic Paint.